I just got back from going grocery shopping. But while I was there, when I was leaving, I could hear somebody preaching the gospel about the Jesus and the Lord of peace and love and all this crap. So I went to see who it was. This guy had a little stand set up, speakers on top of the car, just talking all this talk and stuff. So I walked up and I asked him, you're claiming this Bible is God's infallible word. Oh, yes, it is. So Jesus' commands, you're supposed to follow them. Oh, yes, yes. So in Matthew, I can't remember the verse right now off the top of my head, but again in Luke, towards the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Christ said to give to any who ask. Or it might be just before the Sermon on the Mount. I can't recall. But give to any who ask of you. I said, well, I know that in that book, Christ commanded you to give to any who ask it of you. In Luke, he said if somebody forces you to walk a mile with him, then you should walk 2. So you should always give more than what you're asked for. So just give me what you got on you. I don't care if it's 20 cents or $100. I'm asking you. Of course, he immediately backpedaled. Oh, he doesn't have to prove anything to me. He doesn't have to impress me. I said, well, if your God is all-knowing, shouldn't you be worried about impressing him? Proving to him that your faith is so strong that you'll follow his commands even if you don't understand why you should. So he just kept ignoring me, and so I started just talking as loud as I could, since he had a microphone and speakers, about how shallow this guy's faith must be if he could decide that he knew more than his God did and determine which commands he had to follow, or which ones were important, which weren't, what he needed to obey, what he didn't. So I tried to have a conversation with him, because I tried to get him on the subject of evolution. I said, well, do you believe in evolution? Oh, no, blah, blah, blah. I said, he's the same old stupid. He told me that that's where I was ignorant. But he came out with the same stupid, ignorant comment. If we evolved from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? So I told him that's where you're ignorant. We didn't evolve from monkeys. We evolved from a common ancestor, which is why we share so much DNA with monkeys. Of course, all that's scientific, so he doesn't need to believe it. Just like, according to him, the Earth is only about 6,500 years old, rather than the billions that we know it to be. But in all this, I was just trying to have a conversation with him, trying to get him to talk to me. Of course, he kept ignoring me and wanting to go back screaming and shouting and everything else. Said he had the right to free speech. He didn't, he said, well, I could leave. I said, well, you can too. You can pack up and leave. As far as I know, I've got the same right to free speech as you do. So, and tried to have a conversation with the man. And at one point, he mentioned that he's had people yell and scream at him and a gun pulled on him. And I'm always armed. I have my .380 on my hip. I said, well, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to pull a gun at you, and I'm not threatening you. Have I made you feel threatened? Well, yeah. I said, well, how? Because that was never my intent. I asked questions of you, which that book says you're supposed to answer with courtesy and respect. Give reasons for the faith that you hold. Do so with courtesy and respect. Rather than trying to belittle somebody and telling them that they love Satan and hate God, which I tried to explain to him. If I don't believe in God, how could I possibly love Satan? Because where would Satan have come from? If God never created a Lucifer, there was never a Lucifer to fall, there was never a Satan. And I said a couple of words when I generally say when I'm starting to get mad and trying to be a little emphatic, that he wanted to call vulgarity. And I said, no, you're the one that determines it being vulgarity. You're the one who decides what's vulgar and what's not. To me, it's just being emphatic. It's just language. And I went completely off the subject I was on. But anyway, I asked him, in what way I'd made him feel threatened, because I hadn't made any threatening gestures or motions. I didn't do anything to threaten him. My gun was on my hip, but my hand never went near it the entire time I was there. And he said, because my heart was black with sin. That's what made him feel threatened. So he couldn't come up with a real reason to feel threatened. But since I didn't agree with what he had to say, he had to make up an imaginary reason for me to be threatened. Because I told him I didn't believe that there's any such thing as sin. Because sin is a crime against God. If there's no God, I obviously can't believe in sin. Well, anyway, it was a Walmart parking lot, and the cop drives by. He tried to flag the cop over once, and I kept arguing with him, and the cop just ignored him. Eventually, she did come back because somebody pulled up in a car and actually put money in the bucket he had setting out. So he's getting money, but woe be unto any who ask him to do as his God commands and give them some, just because I'm dressed halfway decent and my truck doesn't look too terrible bad. You know, he decided I was well off. I didn't need anything. Well, little does he know, he never saw the handicap tag on the back. He didn't know the nerve damage I've got to my back and legs. Didn't know I'm on disability, so I don't have much of an income. So anything would have been of help to me, would have been a benefit that I really do need. I just normally don't ask. Not when I think somebody would actually give. I don't ask. We'll put it that way. Because I knew he wouldn't obey that command. I mean, he could have pulled out $1 and said, this is all I have on me, but you're welcome to it because Christ told me to give to anybody that asks of me. But no, he chose not to follow that command, which showed me how good his faith could possibly be. He obviously has none. He's nothing but a hypocrite. And just like he wanted to talk about, you know, Jesus being the God of peace, I said, well, wait a minute. Christ himself said he came not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, to set father against son and daughter against mother against daughter. So how can you made up God? You gave him the attributes that you wanted to give him. Your God isn't the God of this book, it's the God of your mind. But he still didn't want to have an intelligent discussion. Then, or anywhere but here, he wanted to say, after he finally got the cop over there, because the girl that pulled up and asked me questions, why don't you believe in a God? And I said, well, because of the preponderance of evidence to the contrary, and for the complete lack of evidence in support of. Because she said her brother doesn't believe in God. He calls the Bible a work of fiction. I said, well, that's all it is. Well, she said non-fiction. I said, no, it's a work of fiction. She said, well, that's what he calls it. I said, well, because it basically is. You know, it's written off superstition and everything else, the things that men wanted to believe at the time, just like they said about Greek gods and other gods in their time, not understanding the world around them. You know, if you actually read the inconsistencies within the book and everything else, just like but anyway, while I was talking to her, he took the cop did pull up and stop. He managed to get her to stop, so he went over and told her whatever, I don't know. But she threatened to haul me off for disorderly conduct because I was arguing with the guy. Said if I spoke to him again, it would be harassment. I said, well, he never asked me to leave. He told me I could leave, but he didn't ask me to leave him alone and not to talk to him. She said, well, we'll fix that right now. So she walked over there and told him that if he didn't want me to speak to him, he had to tell me that he didn't want me to speak to him. Of course, he tried to say, well, I told him that when he first walked up. I said, no, you didn't. You know, have some integrity. But he asked me to leave, so I cordially wished him a good day and asked him to think about what we talked about. But anyway, him going and whining and crying to the cops because somebody didn't agree with what he had to say, wanted other people to hear their viewpoint as well, not just his viewpoint, made him run to the cops. Of course, we're here in the Bible Belt, the cop probably believed in God, might have even gone to the same church. I don't know. I'm not saying that she did. She might be an atheist for all I know. But down here, that's very unlikely. But, you know, I thought God was supposed to be their armor. But apparently the police are their armor. And apparently he did have a permit from Walmart because he's in a Walmart parking lot. But as far as I know, that unless Walmart asked me to leave, I have equal right to say what I want to say while I'm in their parking lot as well. But if I continued talking to him, it was harassment. I had ice cream melting and everything else, so I went ahead and left. But that just, one, showed me he had no faith. Because he'd make up whatever reasons he wanted for not following the Word of God, for obeying its commandments. Because even just the simple command to give reasons for the faith that he holds and do so with both courtesy and respect, he couldn't honor. He couldn't give me the reasons for his faith. He just said he was converted. He believed in God, blah, 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 blah. No real reasoning behind it. He couldn't support anything that he was trying to say against evolution or about the age of the earth or anything else. And then, like I said, towards the end, so he'd sit down and talk to me, just not here. And I said, well, why not talk to me right here? I'm here, you're here. And then right after that, when the girl pulled up, he went running to the cop. So, and then he, well, you want my information so we can talk somewhere else? I said, no, you had the opportunity here. You could have talked to me. You could have done something to show me that your faith was real. Because unless, one, I'll probably never change my mind. I'm not going to lie about it. I don't believe in a God. I told him I have enough integrity. I'm going to tell you straight up how I feel. It probably wouldn't change my mind at all. But by the same token, I wouldn't lie about your reaction. If you would have given me $1, then anybody asked me, I said, yeah, he really believes what he's preaching anyway. He, down to giving money to anybody that asked it of him. He actually believes that that book is the Word of God and that he should follow all God's commandments to him. You know, I would have been honest about it. But just like any other person out there, any other Christian that I've asked, which has only been a couple, and most of them probably don't even know I asked because I did it in YouTube videos responding to their own hypocrisy. Sorry. Talking too much. So I doubt they ever got the word that I'd asked them. But this guy's the only person I've ever asked face to face. Or no, he's not. I've asked a couple other people, but just the other people, it was more in a conversation, you know, what their answer would be. I didn't actually ask them to give me anything, but if somebody did ask them to give, well, it depends on what they believe. Well, the book doesn't say only give to believers, because just before that he said love everybody, love your enemies even more than your friends, because they're the ones that need your love. So why would he then go on to say any, meaning exclude any that you don't feel like giving to? But that's basically what this guy did, because I asked him, you know, well, you just too ignorant to understand. You have to believe in order to understand the Scripture. And what kind of sense does that make? The book that's supposed to convince you to believe, you can't understand unless you already believe. But I don't understand these people, and I told him just like I meant, because he said something derogatory about me and atheists in general, and you know how God was Christians' armor. I said it helped them a lot during the Crusades, didn't it? Oh, that was Catholics. Well, where do you think Protestants came from, or why they're called Protestants? They protested against the faith and threw out 4 books of the Bible that they didn't want to believe in because they didn't want to follow the actual words as they were written. Decided to make up their own church, basically, and decide 1,500 years after the fact, you know, what they should follow 1,500 years after the founding of the church. And that's all people do now. It's just like him. He makes up the attributes he wants to make up for God. And that's the God he follows. And even then, he decides which of the commands that he believes that God left in the Bible for him, he has to follow or not. So in his mind, he's a step up from that God because he doesn't have the need to follow that actual God. And then in his cowardice, instead of just having a conversation with me and giving me an answer as to why his faith was so shallow, or a logical, reasonable answer other than I was a sinner and that's why he didn't have to give anything to me, or I looked like it was I was well off. And it doesn't matter, even if I was rich, you know, or poor, or whatever. It doesn't make a difference. I'm still any. The book doesn't say give to those who you think might need it. It does say give to the poor. But then it goes on in other areas, says give all your stuff to the poor. You should be destitute, basically, if you're a follower of Jesus. But in this specific verse, it says give to any who ask of you. It didn't say give based off your belief whether or not they need, or refuse to give to any that you don't want to give to. It says give to any. But he never could give me a reason. And then to show how strong his faith was and that he thought God would protect him and everything else, he took the only method he had to silence my dissenting voice, which was to be a coward and go get the cops to threaten to run me off or to take me to jail for disorderly conduct. And it's like I told the cops, as far as I know, I've got the same right to free speech as he does. You know, and if Walmart asks me to leave their parking lot, I will pack up and do so. I will happily walk off their parking lot. You know, if you're telling me that Walmart asked me, I will pack up and leave. But no, Walmart hadn't asked me to leave their parking lot. But if I stayed, she was going to arrest me for disorderly conduct. Even though I wasn't being disorderly, I might have been disrupting what this guy had to say a little bit, but that's not being disorderly. I wasn't endangering anybody. I wasn't threatening anybody. She did notice the gun on my hip, but she didn't say anything about it. Alabama's an open carry state. You can carry openly without a permit or anything. But I do have a permit, because once I sit in the car, it is considered a concealed weapon because it can't be seen openly. So I've got a permit, but she didn't even ask. She didn't ask my name or any of my actual information. She did threaten to take me to jail for disorderly conduct if I didn't shut up and let her speak, when she started to tell me that I needed to leave. And as far as I know, I have the same right to free speech as he does. Well, you're going to have that right in jail if you blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, fine, just for trying to say I've got the right to free speech. And instead of just packing up and leaving because she told me to, even without any reason, I'm going to go to jail. That's the problem with this country, one of them. But that's basically, anytime I've approached somebody who wants to stand on a corner and scream and shout and preach like that, it's always the same end effect. If their faith is really that shallow, if they don't want to honor their God's infallible word, why do they bother? That's all I wanted to know. I wanted to show him that he was too shallow, had too little faith, too little integrity, too little honor to actually follow the commands of his God. And then ask him why, if his own faith was that shallow, if he believed that book wasn't worth obeying or following, why he would want anybody else to believe in it. Which, of course, never got those answers. When he did say, well, dude, I want his information to talk somewhere else, and no, because to me, he's already shown me the type of person he is, what he is, and everything else. So, sorry I babbled so long. Just wanted to get that out while I'm thinking about it.